Okay, this is page 4 from section 1.1 in the notes. It says find the domain of each function. I'm going to add these directions in interval notation. So the best way to find the domain, which are the x values, is to see what values work. So how I'm going to do this, I'm going to make a number line and figure out what values work. You can also potentially use your calculator, and that might help us also. Like if we look here, if we plug in 0, that is not going to work. 0 squared minus 9 is square root of -9, and that does not work. So if you graph this, you're going to get something like this. And I'm a big fan of my table. So if I go Control T, I can see 3 works. And anything below 3 works. And then the same with -3 works and anything above that. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to shade in on the number line and then I'll write it in interval notation. 3 works, it gives me 0. -3 works. But anything in between here will not work because it would cause me to get something negative inside the radical. Anything to the right of 3 will give me an output. Anything to the left of -3 gives me an output. So my answer in interval notation would be this: -infinity to -3, including -3, comma, 3 to infinity, including 3. So if it'll help you, use your Inspire. If you're not able to use an Inspire, just plug in numbers, see what works, and that works for A. B. Okay, this one, even without a calculator, if I plugged in 4, I would get 0 on the bottom. You cannot divide by 0. So 4 is not a good answer. So I'm going to put an open circle. But anything to the, if I tried 3, I get the square root of -1, and that does not exist. But anything to the right of 4 will give me a positive value when I take the square root of that number. So anything right of 4 would work. So my suggestion, first graph this on a number line, and then we can write it in interval notation like this. C. Again, either use an Inspire, or if you have a fraction, look what you can't have on the bottom. If we look carefully here, the value we cannot get on the bottom is -1, because -1 would give me 0 on the bottom. You can't divide by 0. Any other number works. If I plug in -8, I get -8 over -7. I can plug in 0. I can plug in anything. So I'm going to shade to the right and to the left, and I can write it like this: from -infinity to -1, comma, -1 to infinity. Everything works but -1. D. Same idea. This is a little harder. If we look at the bottom, I'm going to see what values would cause me to get 0. And that would be plus or minus 2. I'm going to put open circles there because you're not allowed to get 2 or -2 because you get 0 on the bottom. And then I have to look at the top carefully. When you take the square root of a number, you can only take the square root of positive values. So what values will work here? Well, if I plugged in -4, I get the square root of 0. So that would work. And then anything to the right of -4 would also work because I'll get positive values. I can include -4 because the square root of 0 is 0, and 0 over anything other than itself works. So it's basically anything to the right of -4 except -2 and 2, because both of those values give me 0 on the bottom. If I wrote that on an interval notation, just going from left to right, it would look like this: -4 to -2, not including, and then -2 to 2, not including, and then 2 to infinity. That would be D.